Welcome to episode 6 of Live Lessons on how to thrive in a fast-paced fintech. We're going to be talking about fine-tuning your character traits, utilising your military skills, and how to know what good looks like when you go behind the scenes of a business like Ebury. For those of you who don't know me, I am the founder and CEO of Redeployable, and I'm delighted to welcome Sophie MacKenzie to the lesson, who is the global head of talent for Ebry. Thanks for being here, Sophie.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.
As a way of an introduction, please can you just give us a rundown of who you are, your background, and what you do at Ebury?
Yeah, so my name's Sophie and I have been in recruitment for a very long time, over 20 years. So a mixture of agency for a long time before moving in-house. And before that, actually, recruitment is my second career because I started off in aviation and then retail. So I know a little bit about making a career transition, which might be helpful for this conversation. And I joined Ebry 3 years ago, so it was my first experience of financial services and in a fintech. And I now head up the global talent acquisition teams, have a brilliant team of recruiters who are very busy helping Ebry find the people we need to grow.
Amazing, and I've had the experience of meeting the team at Ebury. It's such an exciting place to be in, be in the office in Victoria and get to meet the team. So super cool. I'm going to get straight into some questions if that works. And for me, one of the things I was super keen to learn about Ebury when I first started engaging with you is, what kind of character traits make people at Ebury thrive? Like, what makes them good employees?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it is a really unique environment, and then there are lots of businesses like ours within disruptive industries, I guess. So by their very nature, I think they're quite unique. I think there's no perfect formula, but if I think about my colleagues and who does well and who really is successful at Ebury, I think that there's a few things that stand out. So I think flexibility is really key. So that's not just flexibility of action, but I think flexibility of thought as well. So that ability to very quickly adapt to changing situations. We are such a fast-paced business. There's loads going on all the time. And you have to be able to cope with that. But I suppose that's not just about constantly changing, because that could be a little bit chaotic. I think you've got to somehow be able to be flexible while also sticking to a plan or being very clear about the objectives that you want to achieve. So that would be my number one. And second, I think, is resilience. And I always think, I don't know, there's almost like you're not allowed to say, oh, you need to be resilient, because it infers that there's, I don't know, there's something wrong with the culture or it's a really tough place to be. And that's not the case, but it is a very intense, high performance environment. And everything I've just said about the rate of change and everything that we want to achieve, I think you do need to be able to deliver under, pressure and with these changing situations. And I think everyone thinks they're resilient. In my experience, not many people are actually truly resilient. For me, that means not just coping when things are tough, but it's performing well when things are tough. And I think that's really, really important, just because of the expectations we set, the ambition we have as a business. There's lots more, but I think the other one probably is a little bit around curiosity. So I think we're learning all the time. So we're still quite a young organisation in terms of our development. Lots to do. We need people that will come out, solve problems, spot opportunities, ask questions, challenge in the right way. And also because we have this lovely sort of international flavour about us, I think you need to have that curiosity about other cultures and colleagues around the world to sort of adapt to those different sort of groups of people. That's my kind of top three, I think, out of a very long list.
Yeah, and it must make it difficult to kind of find the perfect talent for the business as well, because you're looking for those people who are comfortable with that fast pace, with a changed environment, and who are also happen to be curious as well. So I'm sure it's not an easy job for you and your team finding the right types of people. And a kind of follow-on question from that point is what do you find the difference then? Because you've got so much experience in the recruitment sector, in meeting candidates going into all different sizes of businesses. What do you think the difference is between like your world right now and like an enterprise, truly enterprise world of, an 80, 100 person organization? Do you think you still need some of those kind of traits?
I mean, the traits I've outlined, I would say most businesses probably say they value those. I think where it's just probably intensified in a business like ours is because of the position we are in our development, and our growth plans are, extremely ambitious, but also you've got a business that is still developing. The infrastructure is in some places quite sophisticated, in other places we're still developing it, we're still in a period of transformation and change. I think someone who maybe is used to very, very structured, formalized environments where everyone has a beautifully defined job description and sticks to that that would feel quite uncomfortable, I think, for someone moving to Ebury, where, job descriptions are quite fluid. The great thing is that there's lots of opportunities for people to say, oh, I've spotted this that needs sorting out over here, or something else that we want to improve. And actually there's lots of opportunities for people to actually get hold of things and make a difference. But there has to be that fluidity that you might not get with a more mature organization. And I think our size as well, we're at 700 heads now globally. So it's a good size, but it's still small enough to be quite agile, and that we can change things and improve things. And we're very connected as an employee group, even, across the different countries that we operate in.
Yeah, and maybe doesn't lend itself to somebody who just wants to be in this box and have like a really clear guardrails and they don't step outside of them. And, you work with many other parts of the business to do X, Y, and Z. So, I completely understand kind of we're as a business at like the really early stages of kind of this craziness. But I had the experience of working in big business when I got out, 100,000 person plus, and then working my way down. So it definitely resonates. And I think it's something that the military community, you don't really 100% know about when you get out the force. You don't get the difference really between, not everybody's experienced a business of working in a business of Ebry's size, where you're at now versus a startup, right? So
yeah, I mean, well, it's exactly that. And I think there's so many different organizations, and then you overlay the industry sector. There's lots of different factors. Private sector is different to public, so that it's a big world. Once you leave, and trying to navigate that, I can imagine is very difficult.
yeah, and it's no secret that we've started working with Ebury around military talent. So what is it like? What would you say to veterans who are trying to translate their experience from previously in the military through to kind of getting into a business like yourself, or even into fintech itself? What
Yeah,
advice could you give?
one of the reasons we've started working with you is because we actually think, being very selfish, that this skill set that we're looking for and these behaviors that we're looking for are prevalent in people, service leavers. I think the skill set is definitely there. Look, I mean, I'm learning, as you know, about those transferable skills, and something that hopefully you'll be helping us with. But I think in terms of that translation, it's trying to learn as much as you can about the businesses that you're interested in, and trying to get an understanding of the different departments and how they operate, and identifying maybe if there are certain areas where those transferable skills are going to be more relevant or more easily transferred across, because there's obviously a diverse skill set of people leaving the military as well. It's just understanding where that sort of translates to. So I think the networking is really key to that as well. So if you do have contacts in businesses like ours, or people you can talk to try and understand a little bit more, so you can start piecing together how your sort of CV, how you're going to sell your CV, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you. I have no doubt you have lots and lots of applicants. Whether they're the right types of applicants, you get a ton of applicants into your business because it's fast moving, exciting place to be, well known. Does that networking piece, does it give you a slight advantage if you're referred into the business by somebody who's working within Ebury?
It definitely does. I mean, I think that's true of any candidate from any background that's looking for a job. There's no question if you have got contacts in that organization, it will massively help. You know, it's not going to guarantee you a job, it might not even guarantee you an interview, but it will certainly enable you to get to the right person internally and potentially will get your CV to near the top of the list. You know, it's pretty brutal for job seekers, and I was there a few years ago myself, and you know, trying to get noticed and trying to get to a point where you're in front of people and you can actually talk about your experience rather than just being assessed on that piece of paper, I think is one of the biggest challenges, and using those contacts is the answer to that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I always encourage people to, to kind of try and get that referral in. I just think about how busy your teams are. You're so busy. You're working on some pretty lofty targets, and you've got only a finite amount of time to deal with everything that comes into the business. So
Yeah.
that I try and encourage everybody to kind of give that warm referral. Super important.
You're right. I mean, we're super busy, and I mean, you know, actually, you know, larger organisations. I mean, our application numbers are probably comparatively quite small because we're not a consumer brand. You know, we're in a fairly niche part of the financial services sector. So, if you're applying to a large organisation where they've got, you know, I don't know, a lot of automation earlier on in the recruitment process, I mean, it gets even harder. My team are actually physically, there's a human being reading CVs still, which is great. But yeah, it does make us very, very busy.
Yeah. Yes. So you mentioned a few traits that you were looking for at the beginning of our chat, and quite a few of them relate to them. As the relationship says, relate to the military community. Can you think of some veterans in the business that have made a real impact? You know, we've come in and started to speak to you about the community and tell you all about that kind of the skills, but I know firsthand you've experienced veterans in the business. You know, can you just give us a bit more insight into that?
Yeah, we're really lucky. We've got I've got some lovely veteran colleagues. So yeah, if I think our chief risk officer is ex-military, David Sirignano. So he's come in and very much created the security framework at Ebry and helped us achieve our ISO certification. Neil Harrison, who's our information governance manager. I'm going to get all the ranks and previous experience wrong now, but he was I believe Sergeant Major in the intelligence course. He's come in and really helped us with our operational resilience, so in order to meet the FCA regulatory requirements, so that's been really useful. And then who else? We got David Moran, so I think his background was counterintelligence, and he's worked really hard on our risk management frameworks and methodologies. I think if I think about those people who I work very closely with, you know, what's the quality that stands out? I mean, they're just unflappable, you know, and it can be a very intense, busy environment, Ebry, and you know, whatever the frustrations and when things don't quite go according to plan, they're just, I don't know, they're just unfazed by that. They just, you know, pick themselves up and off they go. And yeah, just very, very easy to deal with, very calm and just super professional, which is great.
Yeah, it's good. And I've met a couple, and I would agree. And you're right, you got the rank terminology correct. Yeah, it was so amazing. Yeah, so you know it was. Okay, so just moving a bit into kind of Q&A, if you will. I want to just kind of put a few questions to the floor just to see. You know, people usually have a couple of questions. So I don't know if Annabelle, who is behind the scenes here, can drop up the Slido, and maybe we could get some questions to the floor. How would you suggest service leaders prepare themselves during their transition period?
I think this advice extends to all people looking for a job. I think, you know, really think about yourself. So don't take for granted the experience that you've got, but you need to start to understand how to articulate that to people. So often that's, I think, in any interview, that's where people can really struggle when they haven't had an interview for a while, is how do you, well, firstly, kind of probably not valuing your own experience enough. So you've got to really look at what are the tangible examples you have to demonstrate behaviors or skill sets. So, going through the CV, really making sure that that's all captured. And I think, familiarizing yourself with the job market. So getting to know the outside world and, trying to get a feel for maybe the type of organization which might suit you best.
Yeah, I mean, super advice. I think it's very difficult because there's so much variety. You just mentioned industry earlier on, but then function. I think it's really, really easy to become kind of overwhelmed with that
Yeah.
skill translation. So something that stuck out to me then is you saying you need to really get into the job description, really understand the job description you're going for.
Yeah.
And it's super difficult when you're applying. If you're trying to apply for 100 jobs at once,
Yeah.
you should be kind of more focused.
Yeah. Well, if you can, and it's really difficult. It is a full-time job, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Are there roles that are more suited to veterans than others at Ebury?
I think there's certainly departments where it's maybe a little bit more about transferable skills. Then, there are some areas where we're probably looking for very, very specific, maybe finance experience, for instance, or technical experience. But if I think about, David's division, so security and risk, I think that's an obvious one that translates well. There's just the logistical element, the analysis, sort of the project management skills, I think, work really well. But also, we have a large sales function, I think, for maybe people who are maybe less experienced in their career. I think that can be a really great career where it's a bit more about you as a person and it's down to your individual drive and ability to build relationships, which I think is a lot more universal. So yeah, there's a few departments where it would be an easier transition.
Amazing. And how easy to change your career path once you get into Ebury? Is there room to maneuver around? So we hear a lot about people who maybe land in their first role and they've done a lot of due diligence and they've landed into the role, love the company, but actually they've figured out that done a year, 2 years in specific role, and I'm interested in pivoting into sales or project management or David's team. What opportunity is there within Ebry to do that?
Yeah, I think that opportunity is definitely there. I mean, there needs to be a vacancy, and there needs to be that opportunity within that particular team. But I think we do see it. There is some fluidity between departments. Again, depending on what is the skill set required. I think where it works particularly with Ebry because of the type of business we are and everything I've mentioned in terms of the kind of place it is. I think there's a real value once you get into the business and you've built those relationships. It becomes even more valuable that we can use that skill set internally, and would rather do that than lose someone externally. So where we can, we absolutely will lose people.
Yeah, amazing. So people get that opportunity. And I guess it's just like internally networking as well, right? To understand where you want to go, start to build relationships in different areas, and then you can start to plot your path from there.
Exactly.
You get that early warning detector that there's potentially a role coming up that might be a good fit. Okay, two more. What specific skills or qualifications are typically sought after in candidates applying for roles within the fintech sector?
So it depends, and fintech is quite a broad church, isn't it? In relation to Ebry, I mean, gosh, if you think about our corporate functions, it could be anything from, I don't know, marketing experience, legal experience, HR experience. But I think, within our sales teams, we're looking for an element of obviously finance experience, ideally within FX. So from other FX risk management businesses or from the banks. So I think that's obviously a experience that we value. On the tech side, so some of the, I guess, the more classic tech roles, so security engineering, Python developers, that kind of skill set. Again, I think we'll be looking for those in the near future. And then everything else is, yeah, it depends on the corporate function, and the specific experience required for that. But there's a real variety of positions across the board here.
Amazing. Lots to look at and go after. And finally, what does the typical interview process look like?
So typically, you'd have a meeting with a member of my team. So I guess that initial conversation just to see if there's a fit. And, what we're looking for at that stage is, understanding of the experience and the relevance for the role that you're applying for. But a big emphasis on culture fit, the behaviours we've mentioned, and then all the really important stuff, the logistics around salary and location, all that good stuff. And then, typically meeting the line manager for that particular position. And obviously it completely depends on the department. In some of the more technical functions, there might be some kind of test involved. But typically, I think we have a fairly light touch recruitment process. I think in some of our more senior roles, you might have to meet quite a few people, including potentially even the CEO, who's very, very close to everything that goes on at Ebry. So yeah, really depends on. We don't have a very sort of formalized, standardized process.
And I guess it's just come, regardless of the process, come very, very well prepared.
Yeah, I don't want to anticipate my kind of 3 takeaway because that's one of the.
Oh, is that? Oh, cool. Perfect transition.
Preparation is key.
Yeah, perfect transition. So let's roll into your 3 key takeaways then, if you will.
So we'll do that one. It's almost like we planned it. So yeah, for me, it's still, after all these years, doesn't matter what background someone has, one of the biggest things that lets people down in an interview is lack of preparation. Even if they're told, oh, you must do your research, it tends to be really top level. And this is senior candidates, and who arguably have got the experience. So it doesn't really matter, but this is what lets people down. So making sure you really do some proper deep research into the organization, and simple things like looking up the interviewers on LinkedIn, what's their background, is there any common ground, properly. Don't just skim the About Us page of the website. You need to get right in there. What are the products that this business is selling? Why are those products useful? Can you dig out any information about, how that company operates? I mean, in Ebry's case, we have podcasts, we have loads of content online, but there's not many people that actually take the time to really dig into that. And that's the sort of thing that goes a long way in an interview, I think. So, preparation really key. And yeah, I think it's an easy fix, but one that not many people do properly.
Yeah, and such a shame. Such a shame because they got through the busy door.
Yeah,
through the busy door.
Yeah, and you've got to make that interview count because it's not easy to get them always. Number two would be use your network. So what we were alluding to before, I think within the military there are some, really strong connections, strong links. There's lots of great organisations like Redeployable, charities, lots of events. I was at an event with Neil Harrison the other week at the Intelligence Corps, which was really useful. So there's loads of good stuff happening, but I think don't be afraid to almost ask as well. I think that can sometimes hold people back, and it did for me when I was looking for a job, and sometimes you hold yourself back and don't want to kind of be a burden or be too cheeky. But I think you really do have to do that. So use your experience, use your network, but equally connect people like me. LinkedIn is a busy place, but if I do have a nice message from someone, I'll always do my best to try and make time, or at least give it a look. And that can be a way of again just personalizing that whole application process.
Yeah, amazing. Number 3.
Number three is none of what I'm saying, by the way, is groundbreaking. I was trying to think of something that was going to be really unusual, but it's all kind of common sense. But I think you've got to be really open and flexible, particularly for people making this very significant transition. It might not be a perfectly linear process. It's very unlikely your first job is going to be the right fit in the perfect situation. Then off you go. Taking Neil again as an example, I know his first job when he left was into sales. I think he was really enjoying it, and then obviously was asked to come to Ebry by David. But again, he's now in a very, very different role than the role that he went into when he left. And I've experienced that in my career, that sometimes you've got to be prepared to maybe take a little bit of a winding route. That could be, for instance, looking at taking a contract rather than a permanent position. I've done that a couple of times and it's paid off. You've got to be a little bit careful with that. But if sometimes you've got to take a calculated risk if it gets you into an industry or a role that you really want to get into. So I think just being really open, because I think if you box yourself in too much, you'll run out of road pretty quickly. So yeah, that's my final takeaway.
Amazing advice. Amazing advice. I really, really do appreciate you taking the time to speak with everyone in the community today. You said it's not groundbreaking, but the reality is, from somebody like yourself, just to kind of hear and drill into people the most important lessons to try and, it's not just about getting in the door. It's then about making sure that you give yourself the best chance of success when you get into interview. Highly competitive. You got to put the work in.
You do. I'm afraid there's no shortcut with this. Yeah, but there's lots of support there as well, and yeah, anything we can do to help, and we certainly will.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Sophie. For those of you listening, Annabelle, our brilliant producer, will drop a link in the comments below if you're interested in hearing about Ebury. We've spoken about our partnership. If you're interested about hearing about Ebury news, roles at Ebury, then drop your name and email in the form. And also our community launch coming up soon. We'll involve you in that, and we'll be able to feed you more information and opportunities there. But that's it. Thanks so much for your time, Sophie.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Ben. See you soon.
See you soon.